Welcome to Executive Insights for Life Sciences Innovators, and thanks for joining us. On this podcast, we'll explore leadership, innovation, and growth in the life sciences sector. I'm Don Alexander, founder of GeneCoda, a boutique executive search firm dedicated to connecting visionary leaders with life sciences companies shaping the future of therapeutics and scientific tools. On each episode, we'll dive into candid conversations with industry pioneers, uncovering strategies, insights, and real world experiences that drive success in our industry. If you're interested in being considered as a future podcast guest, please scan the barcode image at the top of my video frame and follow those instructions. Now I'm pleased to be joined by Jason Kralic, the CEO of Tellus Therapeutics. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Don. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate the space that you've created for these conversations and look forward to talking to you.
Likewise, Jason. Jason is a neuropharmacologist by training who spent his career at the intersection of science, business development, and company creation. Before founding Tellus, he held senior business development roles at GlaxoSmithKline, UCB, and Apexa Therapeutics, led multiple licensing and spin-out transactions, and helped advance CNS programs, central nervous system programs, from early science through late-stage development. Today at Tellus, he's focused on developing novel therapies for neonatal brain injury, one of the most challenging and underserved areas of medicine. Outside of his work, he has taken up spearfishing with his teenage sons, proving that even biotech CEOs occasionally escape the lab. So, Jason, again, welcome. Let's talk a little bit or dive into a little bit about your career journey and leadership philosophy. What initially inspired your journey into the life sciences industry?
Well, of course, it has been people I've met, along the way. Very early on, I don't want to go back too far, but I had a couple family members who worked for pharmaceutical companies. And when I talked to them about how they would translate science into treatments for human health conditions, I thought it was fascinating and the fact that it could be a career. But it really wasn't until I was into my scientific training, had met some mentors. One of those early on was here in North Carolina, Dr. Carrie Weinberger at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. It's there where I got to see how discovery research could really impact human health on a large scale. That influenced me to go into receptor pharmacology or neuropharmacology. I've always been interested in how drugs influence the brain and behavior. And it was my postdoc at the University of Zurich, my mentor, Dr. Jean-Marc Fritchie. He was a multidisciplinary scientist, and he encouraged me to really look at problems that we're trying to solve by working with a team of subject matter experts. We can't do much on our own. We really need to be a part of a large team to get something significant done for human health. It was then that I moved into the pharma industry. I know it's difficult for a lot of people to make that transition from academia into the industry. And there were people like Carrie, Jean-Marc, and one last person I'll mention is Dr. Bill Matthew. He was the person who hired me into industry for the first time without having any experience. And he himself had started the neurobiology program at Duke University and had made the career shift himself to move into industry in a business development role. So seeing people show me that there is a path for me and others, obviously, to really follow their interests and not be sort of narrowly defined by one discipline. And really, you can do anything in this industry. You mentioned the lab. I rarely go into the lab anymore, but I'm still very close to the science, and I'm happy to be able to see that those opportunities are open to scientists.
Absolutely, absolutely. Your story is not unlike others I've heard. How has your leadership philosophy evolved as you moved closer, I suppose, to the CEO seat that you hold today?
Yeah, a number of experiences have influenced that. Obviously, when I started out, I was learning, and I still am. I think it's one of the traits that I look for in our team members, which is sort of a learning and growth mindset. And getting closer to the CEO seat, your responsibilities change. So my responsibility when I was further away from this seat was, on the project, delivering what I needed to do for my team. It's sort of changed to where my job is to really support the overall mission of the company, which is to develop treatments for brain injury in newborns and to support the team so that we can do this. Because as I mentioned before, it is a team effort. We rely on a number of people and institutions. So for me, my leadership style has been making sure that we can get as much as possible from the team, the resources, and the institutions that we work with. I've heard it said that a CEO has two jobs. It's one is to make sure that you have a team that can deliver and you have the resources available for them to do so. Um, that said, we're a small company, and I still feel that I wear many hats just as our small team does.
100%. I suspect that's this kind of team environment that you talk about at Tellus is probably fairly different than maybe Glaxo, SmithKline, and some of the roles that you've held earlier, but still a team spirit
Which,
nonetheless.
which, if I can add, all of those experiences at those companies or labs were had people in leadership positions, which I learned from a lot of do's and some don'ts that I try to carry into how we lead TELUS.
Absolutely, 100%. That's great. Really good overview, Jason. Thanks for that. Let's move into just the platform thinking and innovation regarding the company, a little more on the company's technology and kind of the market at large. First of all, what unmet needs is Tellus Therapeutics ultimately trying to solve?
Yeah, so I have to mention that TELUS wouldn't be a company if it wasn't for our co-founder, Dr. Eric Benner. He's a neonatologist at Duke University. He's the one who discovered the class of compounds that we're developing to treat unmet needs in preterm infants. So the unmet needs that we're aiming to address are those in the neonatal intensive care unit. As a neuroscientist, I had not understood or had experience with brain injuries that occur right around the time of birth. My sons, fortunately, had a pretty straightforward experience coming into this world. And working with Eric, I have learned about how much can go wrong. Not to scare anybody who's about to have a baby, but the NICU does a great job of supporting viability of the baby once the baby is born and getting them to thrive to leave the neonatal intensive care unit. However, unfortunately, there are a number of injuries that occur to the brain, the lungs, the GI tract that will follow that patient for the rest of their lives with a chronic condition. And the unmet need that we're focused on is a brain injury that occurs right around the time of birth due to complications with preterm birth. And they lead to motor and cognitive dysfunction, again, for the lifetime of the patient. Cerebral palsy is an outcome of the type of injury that we're trying to repair. So we really look at the mission of the company is to intervene in the first few weeks of life to correct the development of that baby, that newborn, so that they will have less disease burden or hopefully no disease burden due to that preterm birth.
That's great. That's really helpful. Just as a maybe a little bit of a follow-up there at a high level, what's the biological or I guess mechanistic insight that the company was built around? Why do you believe it's, commercially viable versus, scientifically interesting, if you will?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. It's what attracted me to working with Eric initially about 7 or 8 years ago. I had done due diligence, scientific due diligence on hundreds of programs, And when I saw the characterization that Eric had performed on the molecules that we're developing, understanding the mechanism of action, and that they are developable as molecules, that's what initially attracted me. The reason to believe in this approach is that we started with a class of compounds that are found in breast milk. And ironically, the babies that most need these compounds aren't able to breastfeed while they're in the NICU. And Eric had identified this class of compounds called oxysterols, and they act through two mechanisms of action. One is to repair the cell types that are injured with preterm birth, and the other is to reduce inflammation. And together, these help address brain injury and repair, gut injury, potentially lung injury. And the animal model data that we've generated in multiple animal models of disease all point towards its ability to repair this injury and improve outcomes. So of course we have to translate this into the clinic, and we may talk about translational challenges. It's a new area of interest for me, translational science, and there's a lot to resolve there. But I also see that there's a path to getting new drugs developed for newborns.
That's great, Jason. Yeah, I mean, just as follow up to your thought on that. I mean, are there transitional risks, or maybe what are the biggest translational risks, rather, that you've kind of had to manage as the science moves forward towards the clinic?
Yeah. Good question. And it's really the reason we founded Tellus Therapeutics was to develop a business case and a development plan, a regulatory path that would give investors, physicians, and ultimately families confidence that this treatment would help patients. So the translational risks, of course, one thinks about the regulatory path. There are not very many new drugs developed for these patients. I think the last new drug approved for the NICU and preterm infants is surfactant, and that was over 20 years ago. So what that means is that there isn't a lot of regulatory precedent for how we demonstrate the safety and efficacy of our molecules or other companies working in the neonatal care space. And so in establishing Tellus, it allowed us to create an infrastructure and a plan to de-risk that development. And of course, we did that initially through non-dilutive funding for further scientific discovery research. But then it got into the translational effort around IND enabling studies to show that these molecules are fit not only for treating humans, but treating our most vulnerable humans, which are newborns. And so how we have attempted to de-risk this translational risk is to work with regulators, work with the key opinion leaders that know these patients and this pathway, and to get as much agreement as we can across the board in terms of the path that we need to take in order to secure the funding and support to carry out those studies.
Absolutely, 100%. Giving the stakeholder buy-in / visibility there is pretty important, I would imagine. So good. Let's jump into business
Sure.
strategy, scaling a company, those types of aspects. What would you say have been the toughest, I guess, operational and strategic or strategic decisions thus far that you've had to make, I guess?
Yeah, so strategic decisions every day. We're either making decisions based on the best information we have or adjusting our strategy. Early on, I would say it came down to funding. As with most companies, we relied on non-dilutive funding, and that allowed us to further validate the approach that we were embarking on. And then when it came to venture investment, this is what all companies rely on. But then there's that question of is it the right kind of money and type of money at the right time? So early on, we had a term sheet for it was $50 million for a Series A investment. And we ended up not going with that VC because the way the company was going to be structured, how Eric, our co-founder, who is the scientific, inventor and clinician, we just didn't feel that it would really support our ultimate goal, which is to get this molecule and others through the clinical development process for this population. One thing that was important to us is that because of the lack of precedent for development for newborns, that once we took on venture investment, that they would look to redirect the scientific goals towards adults, where the path is better understood. And so it was important for us to make sure that the money that we took into the company was going to allow us to reach that goal. And we decided to let that term sheet go. And it took another 6 months until we took the initial term sheet we did for a smaller $2 million seed investment. But that has led then to a Series A investment that has supported the company to date. And what was really important there for that strategic decision was the investors that we are working with. And I have to mention the Zontogeny team, Heather Antiaqua and Chris Garabedian have been investors, mentors, board members, and really supporting us through, a challenging a path for a company. So strategic decisions, that was a tough one. Do you leave a lot of money on the table when you feel like it's not right for us? I think the other has been how we engage with the FDA, how direct and aggressive to be in requesting feedback for a path into the clinic for newborns. And an example there is that this indication that we're treating in newborns does not exist in adults. So this is really a neonatal first or pediatric first program. And the idea of going into a healthy adult volunteer population as a phase one really adds more time, complexity. And the question was, would we really generate useful information that would support going into a newborn patient population? Ultimately, we decided to take a more conservative approach, which is to get that healthy adult data to make sure that our compounds, our molecules are safe, well tolerated, exhibit pharmacokinetics that wouldn't present a challenge. And in hindsight, could we have pressed to go directly into a newborn patient population without first going into adults? And it remains to be seen. We are cleared for a phase one trial, so it just adds a little bit more time. It requires investors to have a little bit more patience and see a longer time horizon as being worthwhile given the unmet need that we could address. If I haven't mentioned it before, there are no treatments for babies born preterm with this injury. And we believe that once we get into the clinic, we'll be able to demonstrate the efficacy of this approach.
Those are really insightful points. And boy, I think it's probably pretty difficult to turn down that sum of money. But, in one sense, I heard a little bit of sticking to what the vision of the company is and continues to be. And yeah, that regulatory pathway when you're developing a novel product for really an audience that's both underserved, but yeah, that I can see how that would have been a challenging decision fork, if you will, to try to navigate. So good, really interesting experiences there, Jason. Let me ask you this: what advice, that you pulled from, these are other lessons that you've had in your career? Would you, maybe offer up to founders that are building, companies in the life sciences sector? Are there any Yeah, is there any takeaways for you that would be translational to them?
Yeah, I think I feel like I've been very lucky and fortunate that in working with Eric and collaborators that uh, we have developable science and technology. I think that there were many opportunities over the last 7 years where if we had not characterized, uh, the biologic mechanisms, the molecules, really had an understanding of the clinical unmet need, uh, if it weren't for having a neonatologist, originate this company, we would not know the space well enough to effectively navigate it. So I think advice to anybody who's founding a company is that to make sure that you really have a accurate understanding of what the unmet need is, and how to what's going to be required for for that drug to successfully be implemented clinically. And for the NICU, it's so important because it is a segment of patient care that looks much different than, say, treating adults. There are Obviously, we're working with patients that are days or weeks old. They have actively developing organ systems, and they respond differently to medication than an adult does. And so, just that alone, we had to spend a lot of time talking to uh, key opinion leaders, experts in the area outside of our own echo chamber, just to make sure that what we're aiming to treat and how we're aiming to do it actually fits with uh, the real world evidence that exists for these patients and medical practice and treatment protocols. Um, it's also talking to investors and potential acquirers early. I'm sitting here in Alexandria Launch Labs. I remember talking to Blake very early on before we even had a pitch to say, Blake, as a VC, what feedback do you have based on what our business case and rationale is? What would you recommend? And it was getting a lot of input, which is why it's great to have the network that we do here to get that feedback. People who care about your success and giving you constructive feedback. Um, the other piece is humility. I mentioned a growth mindset or learning mindset. Um, I work with people who are, decades expertise in an area, but they're also willing to admit to what they don't know and take on input from others. It kind of goes back to what I learned during my postdoc, which is that multidisciplinary approach. Um, I can't imagine a new therapy is going to be effectively developed based on one person's knowledge and opinion. So, uh, I could go on. Non-dilutive funding. Non-dilutive funding is something that I've found not only validates the ideas that you have, but also shows future investors that you're not relying on their investment to de-risk every aspect of the program. Um, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's good. Those are some really good ones, I think. Thanks for all of that. Let's talk a little bit about the future. I guess there are a couple of questions here. What capabilities overall become critical as companies move from science to scale, or in this case, into the clinic? And
Yeah.
then, kind of how you think about talent as the company evolves, through its different stages.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of going on what I said earlier, which is a lot of us are scientific experts or discipline experts, and it's moving to the big picture. So we're a team of four. I got to mention our scientists, Kadar Abdi, Jaron Ballantyne, who runs clinical, Austin Schwartz, who is finance and operations. And we all come from disciplines, experience that are, rather narrow. And as we've scaled as a company, moving from just the science into clinical development, thinking about commercial business development, operations, scaling, as you mentioned, we've tried to scale people-wise very slowly, uh, in asking people to wear multiple hats. So it's if we had all started out as four chemists who were unwilling to think about the processes that are going to be required to move that molecule into the clinic, we wouldn't get very far. So it's really important for the core team to have that multidisciplinary growth mindset. We rely heavily. We have a team of 20 or more consultants that work with us, and what they bring is that subject matter expertise, but also that industry experience where they know ultimately how to help us deliver on our goals. Um, yeah.
That's great. Multidisciplinary core group with varied experiences and a larger consulting base that you can draw from for specific areas of expertise and knowledge.
And I'll use the C word, culture.
Yes.
I know that can be a bit dangerous, but culture is important. I won't say that I had a plan for it, but looking back on it, I can see how the culture that develops within our company, Tellus, which is, a handful of four, five, six of us, and then the team that we work with, if there wasn't alignment on how we work, what our mission is, how we treat one another, what our commitment is to this effort, I think that would show not only to our broader team that we work with, the institutions that we collaborate with, investors that we speak with. I think they'd see that we are, sincerely committed to this effort for the right reasons, and we're humble where we need to be, and also focused on what we need to deliver. And an example of that would be this class of compounds, oxysterols, has potential to be developed for a number of indications, both in the neonatal intensive care unit and in adults. And it's been a challenge for us to stay focused on moving our lead asset into the clinic for brain injury in preterm infants, whereas we could have spread ourselves too thin, trying to chase every application that there is, given that we only have a team of four. So,
You've got to pick a starting point.
gotta pick.
Absolutely, 100%. No, this is great. As we come to a conclusion of today's podcast, are there final thoughts, Jason, or advice that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, so we're all interested in improving health for humans, whether they be adults or newborns, and I think we all come to it with good intentions, and I think it's about staying open-minded to alternative approaches. What we've learned or how we believe something should be done, we should at least be open to discussing alternatives. So if there's a meeting that we're having and I have a certain mindset towards how it should be structured, what we should get out of it, we need to stay focused, but we also need to listen to those who speak up, who have questions, who do challenge things. And, I've really in my career have been moving from I love business development. I love bringing together people, ideas, and then resources. And what's really intrigued me is this concept of translational science. So it's the process by which we conduct translational research. That's what most of us are trying to do, is bring something from the lab, some discovery, to patients. And there is uh, a standard pathway for that, but how we navigate it is where I think the difference between success and failure can be. And I think it's something like a golf game. I don't play golf, but I hear it's something you can work on forever. And I feel like improving on how we do translational science is, you know, a second career awaiting for me.
That's fantastic. No, good golf analogy there. Um, Final question, where can listeners learn more about Tellus Therapeutics, potentially connect with you?
I'd encourage you to check out our website. We're at tellustherapeutics.com. We have a LinkedIn presence. And I'd also encourage you to reach out to any one of our team members that you find listed there. We're always interested to network, to meet people, families, patients, anybody who's interested in this space. And we're also willing to share what we've learned about how to do neonatal drug development. There's only a handful of companies out there working on this, and those that are, we seem to be talking to one another. So if there's anybody out there who is interested in pediatric or neonatal drug development, please reach out to ask to talk shop. I feel like it's a rising tide lifts all boats situation if we can share.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's what makes the world go round. Well, that wraps up this episode of Executive Insights for Life Sciences Innovators. Appreciate you tuning in. I hope you found today's conversation valuable. If you enjoyed the discussion, please be sure to leave a review and share it with your network. Please also mark your calendars for January 23rd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with Gitta Peterson, the CEO of Genomic Expression.